Next up, Sarah Pickering. Sarah's a London-based British photographer. Since graduating from Royal College of Art in 2005, her work has been extensively exhibited nationally and internationally. Selected group exhibitions include How We Are Now, Photographing Britain at the Tate Britain in 2007, Theatres of the Real, Photo Museum Antwerp in 2009, Manipulating Reality, Palazzo Strolls in Florence 2009-10, Science and Struggle, Photography in the Wake of Postmodernism, Victorian Albert Museum 2011, and Living in the Ruins of the 20th Century, UTS Gallery, Sydney 2013. Solo exhibitions included Instant Control, Museum of Contemporary Photography, Chicago in 2010, and Celestial Objects at Durham Art Gallery 2013. She's been a recipient of several awards, including the Photographers Gallery's Graduate Award, the Gerwood Award for Photography, and the Nina Carter-Gates Prize for Photography in 2013. Her work has been featured in numerous publications and her monograph Explosions, Fires and Public Orders published by Aperture and MOCP. She came on as a teaching fellow of photography at Slade School of Fine Art, University College of London. Sarah.
Thank you. Well, thanks to Lizzie for setting this presentation for me. Thank you to all the other speakers for their great presentations. And I think one of the things about being near the end is that it ends up that everything that everybody's talked about connects with what you're going to talk about. So I feel really enlightened and informed, and there are probably a lot of things that are quite wrong that I'm going to be talking about, but that's my prerogative. Thanks to for Ben and Greg for curating a landmark exhibition. I'm very honoured to be participating in it. The works in the show connect so strongly with my interests and my practice, and many I've researched previously. So I'm excited to have been given this opportunity to share these ideas with you today. In this artist's talk, I am opening up my sketchbook, and instead of talking about my work in isolation, it seems much more relevant in this context to present a range of work that's influenced or informed my practice. I'm going to look specifically at the camera and the gun, and I'll explore the resonances between some facets of fine art practice, science, and science fiction. This won't be an in-depth analysis, more of an overview or visual essay of discoveries and imagery that connect my thought processes. Oh, I've got credit titles. In photographic fine art practice and scientific photography, there are parallels of process in terms of the lengthy series of technological strategies, negotiations, decisions, constraints, and interpretation. The playful energy and investigation that generated much of the earlier photography in the exhibition was a kind of euphoric embracement of the amazing medium and its technological capacity, alongside a creative, imaginative drive to image what the eye alone can't see. In the exhibition, my piece is placed in a lovely juxtaposition opposite Edgerton's photograph of a bullet in flight passing through a lemon. I love the absurdity of shooting a citrus fruit. The composition and structure of the subject is very sculptural. The decision to hold the lemon in place with another bullet suggests a further peculiar trajectory. It doesn't articulate the stability and seriousness of a clamp and a retort stand. Muzzle Flash, in my body of work Celestial Objects, is made by photographing bullets firing from a revolver in total darkness. Each of the photographs I've taken captures the entirety of a gunshot from start to finish. Contrary to the high-speed fraction of suspended action used by Edgerton, my images are a summation of the durational energy and action that the camera witnessed. Now I'm going to mention Murray, but thank you so much, Marta, for that wonderful talk about Murray, and here's my tiny little comment about him. So photography and science are intrinsically linked. The apparatus, chemical and operative principles of photography are underpinned by scientific innovation. Gun cotton that was used to fire guns was also used in the development of photographic film. Interestingly, there's also a crossover here with magic, as gun cotton is flash paper, used to amplify illusion with sudden bursts of flames for magicians' tricks, and it's used in movie special effects, which I'll be talking about later. Aim, shoot and fire. The language of the gun is shared with that of photography and film. It's not surprising that the camera and gun evolved together. In the 1880s, cameras with sequential frames for time and motion studies were made from modified guns with a rotating disc of light-sensitive film recording in the place of the bullet that would have frozen motion. Early movie cameras shared the mechanisms of machine guns. This is documentation of an ongoing collection of mine. A series of sculptural objects and propositions. The camera is present by its absence. There's a handy cable release trigger to sit under an index finger on some of them. Similar to Mary's camera gun, these gun stock camera mounts are used for wildlife. They support long lenses. The photographer is the hunter. This work talks of power relations, the power of the observer over the observed, but also the power of the state and terror. As the freedoms to photograph in public places are diminished, there's no way these days you'd want to take one of these out into the street to help to achieve a lovely steady snap. This is a Mark III Hind machine gun camera, which was used by the British Air Force in World War I for training. There's a wonderful cutaway example of one of these at the National Media Museum in Bradford. In 1914, the gun camera was developed using a Lewis machine gun for training World War I machine gunners. It's another example of the mechanisation of guns and cameras developing in parallel. The camera took medium format film and a notch was clipped into the film to demonstrate correct reloading of the magazine. These are photographs that were taken with target kind of overlay to see how accurate the machine gunner was. The evolution of the camera and gun have continued their intrinsic relationship to the point now where the camera is the bomb or bullet with drones, kill cams or smart bombs. Looking back though to 1915 when the Hind machine gun camera was being used by artists who were also soldiers, I think it's particularly insightful. The vortices were founded in the UK and disillusioned by war, its horror and the mechanisation of its battles. They rejected futurism and its connection with fascism, so it's kind of British strand. Their aesthetic engagement of the tools of war is a direct influence on some work that I'm making at the moment. This is Blast. There are only 2 issues of Blast, and this is issue 2 from 1915. So Blast was the vortices publication, and one of their number, who was based in London, was Henry Gaudier-Breschke. He was French-based and considered himself a vorticist. And the painting represents the gun and modernity abstracted. Gaudier-Breschke's representation of mechanisation and the reduction of the machine gun into severe lines and forms, barely separated from the body, feels somewhat prophetic. His Written from the Trenches in Blast 2 describes a collision of sensibilities. Quote, I have made an experiment. 2 days ago, I pinched from an enemy a Mauser rifle. Its heavy and wieldy shape swamped me with a powerful image of brutality. I was in doubt for a long time whether it pleased or displeased me. I found that I did not like it. I broke the butt off, and with my knife I carved in it a design through which I tried to express a gentler order of feeling, which I preferred. But I will emphasise that my design got its effect, just as the gun had, from a very simple composition of lines and planes. Tragically, after 2 months of fighting and 2 promotions for gallantry, Gaudier-Breschke was killed in a charge in Neuville-Saint-Vaast. He was 23. This is Andre Marais, who has made this painting, Camouflage 280 in gun, ink and watercolour. And this example here is of art, namely cubism, being co-opted by the military. The sketch proposes to camouflage machine guns. Playful yet functional and deadly serious, this cubist painting of a machine gun is actually a proposition for a razzle-dazzle disguise. The first French camouflage squad was formed in February 1915. André Mauve was one of France's most important exponents of camouflage techniques. Juxtaposed strips of colour prevented the eye from recognising the shape of the guns, and the colours were chosen to blend in with the surrounding landscape. The camouflage experts were, for the most part, painters, sculptors and theatre set artists. They invented processes ranging from painted canvases to nets and dummy figures. In the UK, the vorticist Edward Wadsworth supervised the camouflaging of 2,000 ships. So as a counterpoint to the way that photography is applied to weaponry, I was particularly interested in considering the role of an applied rather than purely fine art practice, particularly with the cubist or vorticist camouflage unit. I'm extremely interested in the leaks and the slippages that disrupt hierarchy and genres. Context is key, and this leads me to my next set of slides. This is Lynn Cohen, entitled AstroTurf from 2005. Lynn Cohen was a sculptor who photographs particular and peculiar institutional spaces. In an interview, Lynn Cohen said, "My formative year was at the Slade, and that's where I'm currently a teaching fellow in photography. And she was there from 1964 to 65. She said, the best people were thrown out. That's not the case now. But whatever the sometimes ominous nature of a place's picture, the artist underscores the humour, artifice and illusion that are at play, documenting the fascination with how, quote, the world echoes art, unquote. Her photographs have been described as a form of camouflage, revealing hidden realities. Their presence is that of an imitation of the real world, a catalogue or art installation. The original context is again untethered, usually untitled with little additional information. And presented in an art gallery, they are inevitably seen as artworks. So many photographers cite this publication, Mike Mandel and Larry Sultan's Evidence from 1977, as deeply inspirational, and I'm one of them. Mandel and Sultan lifted their carefully curated photographs from organisations' archives, which included field suppliers, medical research, forensic files, labs tests. Scientific or revelatory in purpose, their context had been removed, and we are presented with a series of situations and phenomena that build formal and sequential narratives. This is Roman Signe's tent from 2002. He was in the tent, he comes out of the tent, and the tent explodes. Signe considers his artworks to be semi-controlled experiments in which he often cannot predict the outcome. Rather than perform in front of audiences, he records his experiments in film and in photographs. This is Chickens Scared by Torpedo. Of all Muybridge's works, this one is naturally my favourite. It's absurd, it's gratuitous, it's hardly a cool and objective study, and again, Marta, I think, beautifully summed up this practice. The gridded backdrop, an obsessive catalogue that this series sits within, acts as an alibi for an elaborate prank to do more than scare the chickens. The common thread for me in these 5 slides, actually, I think that the scientific photography of Egerton, for example, could be included in this, is a reality that is constructed for the sake of being represented. Within Cohen's work, the reality is already a representation, a collision of fact and fiction, images and films that bear witness to an actual event and no less valid as research for me as witnessing actual TV props or actual special effects. I love a representation with a loose grip on reality. So with that reasoning in mind, I found a good way to justify showing you this. It's from a TV programme that was called Sapphire and Steel, starring Joanna Lumley and David McCallum, and it was broadcast in 1981. I've included this clip as I rewatched this series on YouTube earlier this year for the first time since I was 9. I realised it was probably one of the main reasons I wanted to become a photographer. And it also explained quite a lot to me about the sort of subject matter I'm drawn to. I thoroughly recommend it to all sci-fi enthusiasts. So Sapphire and Steel are time travel detectives who have an assignment to deal with people who get trapped in photographs. And this clip is the amazing camera apparatus that's used to examine a girl imprisoned in a black and white print. And there's some great special effects in the series, and you might have noticed this one includes gun cotton or flash paper to represent the flash gun. These are stills from the Gangster Squad trailer, which was a Warner Brothers film from 2012. Intriguingly, the seduction of film and the seduction of the explosion cross paths as cinematic heroes and villains shoot each other in storyboarded narratives, locked in a perpetual feedback loop. The gun is a mythologized artifact. The stills from Gangster Squad are a literal rupture of the cinema screen. This shootout was in a cinema where the screen is ripped apart by gunfire. These scenes were completely scrapped in the wake of a cinema shooting in Denver in 2012. However, the indiscriminate street shootings, aggression, and general glamour and mythologizing of the gun remained in the movie. This is an ongoing project of mine. I've been collecting stills from the peak moment of muzzle flash in westerns, usually applied after the action is being shot with blanks. The burnt-out area in the film becomes a hole or a zone of non-register. There are formal qualities in terms of the destruction of an image, a reference to the materiality of the film, and also metaphorical in looking at the myth of the cowboy and the phallic symbolism of the gun. And this copyright-free, digitally rendered special effect for the muzzle flash from a machine gun is one example of hundreds available for free online to apply to a home movie. It articulates something of the obsession, seduction, and ubiquity of gunfire in the collective psyche. As muzzle flash or guns in the real world have become barely visible for practical reasons to avoid giving away the location of the person firing the gun, special effects have become more spectacular, and movie prop guns have devices fitted to them to massively increase the muzzle flash. So these slides are from the Celestial Object series, which I shot at the same time as the muzzle flash image, which is in the show. Celestial objects could be seen, as the title refers to, heavens, it could be comets, or more close to bullets in flight. There are 6 images here, the same number of bullets that a revolver can hold. They're all different live bullets firing in the dark. I've extended the field of black, and the images take on the appearance of meteorites or distant stars, or even, in effect, to be applied to a movie. And actually, after Marta's paper, I can make a connection with this series and Muybridge and working in series in general, which was quite a wonderful revelation to me. The individual titles echo the naming systems that are used by astronomers to locate their observation. So MFS 002 in this case. This is John Martin, the great day of his wrath. And imagining our beginnings has visual parallels with imaging our end. Apocalyptic scenes by romantic painters, and particularly the skies, were influential on my body of work. This is the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah from 1852. And John Martin, incidentally, was inspired by a group called the Vulcanists, and then their opponents, the Neptunists, which were a discredited scientific theory of geology held by many scientists around the 18th century and early 19th century, that rocks were formed from the crystallisation of minerals in the early Earth's oceans. I've personally remained resistant to the justification of photography as fine art through references to paintings, but it's a useful tool and one that can demonstrate connects to scientific photography, special effects in film, and representations of distant galleries as well. It appears that in imaging the supernova and the Big Bang, the hypothetical imagery draws from that which is already known: explosive special effects, apocalyptic imagery, and high-energy reactions from weapons. The soundtrack helps, too, to evoke a sense of mystery and awe. So, as we've heard already from Marek, and also I've read Kessler to confirm the hunch that I had, the images generated by the Hubble Space Telescope are enhanced and aesthetically interpreted from the information received, and it's not always apparent which imagery of deep space derives from observations and which from conjecture. So this is more imagery from our Celestial Objects series. So the exhibited works include modular and assembled photographs as the fragments of the images of deep space are pieced together, abstracted details of high-pressure burning gas and material. The energy from the muzzle flash entirely illuminates the camera sensor. The image is a product of its own condition. I basically opened the shutter and shot in the dark as someone else was shooting while I put it in the dark. It's quite exciting. Sitting on the line between objective fact, imagined reality, the fragments of muzzle flash reference epic cinema, the skies of romantic painters, and the expansive dioramas that John Martin's paintings inspired. Actually, as I was putting these slides together, I started thinking about Stieglitz's Equivalent series, which kind of treads this line between figuration and abstraction. So I'll put that in this slideshow as well. And just to give you a kind of sense of scale, installation. This is a solo show that I did for a commission by Locus Plus in Durham Art Gallery and Museum. So I'm going to show you another body of work which I haven't exhibited, which is a series called Black Hole. And it's related because it was made at a place called the Gun Barrel Proof House, which is where guns are tested for safety and fired into a sandbank in a warehouse, which is actually called the Black Hole. I placed unexposed photographic paper in safe light conditions into the line of fire, and this is the resulting work. So what you're seeing are crinkles in the paper. They're scanned. They've just developed. Once I've got them out of the black hole space and into light-tight tubes, and then pop them in the developer. And so the light and dark areas are where there's been exposure from the fire, the energy from the gunshots. So the images are exposures and punctures made by the shots, and they hide the material qualities of the medium, and they're a direct record of the event that this paper experienced. The works are in abstraction and simultaneously subject and object. They're self-reflexive, and cosmic. A bit Kepler style. You know, that kind of relationship between something that is and something that isn't. And I found that really interesting in John's presentation. So thinking about objects as well, here is a model that you can download in 3D print from NASA's website, so you can hold exocarina. The 3D print is an evolution of image making, and we're presented with the aura of an original and its duplicate, which are photographic concerns. Scientific models that used to be crafted with wire and beads, wood and glass, plastic crystals, are now not made but modelled in 3D software. Oops. This is a piece of work that I made, which is a 3D laser scan. So it's essentially a lensless image, and it's just been virtually rotated and virtually constructed from the data from lasers scanning this artist palette. The artist palette is a TV prop which was used in a docudrama about an art forger, and it's from my series Art and Antiquities. And it's a method used by museums to present and look at artefacts that can't be touched. So photography is ubiquitous, and for me that's what is particularly interesting about it. It's functional, it's applied, it operates in multitudes of genres. It's such a democratic medium, and I'm very happy to be called a photographer, although the context of my work is usually art, and I work with objects as well as a photographic medium. But the consistent way that I handle materials and make work is through thinking as a photographer. Scientific imagery exists within popular culture, and it's encountered on a personal level, for instance, in ultrasound, X-rays, so it's not an exclusive field, but it does require an expert to interpret the content. Similarly, art operates within a particular discourse, but with both, there's potential to have an aesthetic engagement with the imagery without a radiologist, artist, or curator providing a reading. Another object that I made. I'm quite interested at the moment about this idea of craft and making, and kind of making physical objects, making virtual objects. So this is a bronze replica that I made of machine gun fire simulation device. It's a type of pyrotechnic that's used to produce this magical effect, which is a series from my Explosion series in 2009. And I thought, oh, we must find an excuse to just fit in another sapphire and steel. So to close my presentation, I want to show you a very short clip. And here in the video, Steele is annoyed to find out that his scientific investigation into the case of the man who wasn't there wasn't a simple process of evidence gathering. The slippage between cataloguing observation and subjective association fascinates me. And I propose that instead of fixing a certainty, the representations we make of the world amplify our doubts about the experiences we have of reality.
Tricks! 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 Tricks with film, tricks with cameras. We've been looking for proof, for evidence of some great photographic discovery. Mr. Williamson, photographer, was no more than a clever conjurer. Light patterns, multiple images, mirrors. That was the extent of his talent, excuse me. To someone like Ruth, it was no doubt talent enough. A few cheap tricks to impress the ladies.
Well, at least he bothered to impress them.
He simply used photography, slides, nothing spectacular.
He combined them.
He combined pictures of people with pictures of places. But more important, he combined pictures taken at different times.
They never learn, do they?
About the dangers of mixing the old and the new.